Hey guys, how you doing? We're gonna see how my voice holds out today. I've been feeling a lot better this week. Thank you guys, those of you who reached out to me last week. I didn't feel so hot, and I think I'd just been overworking myself, and I needed some time off. But I'm feeling better this week, and I'm excited to be here and read the next couple chapters. We're getting towards the end here, just so you can see we are so close to the end of this book and the big reveal of who the bad guy is. And I know Joe's out there watching today, and Joe has his suspicions, and I can't wait to see how he looks or how he thinks when he figures out whether he is right or wrong. So, are you paying attention, Joe? All right, let's jump right in. We are on chapter 26. We're going to do chapter 26 and 27 today. They're kind of short. All right, 26. Sage hardly had time to send off a text message to Mark to say thanks before they were back on Gray's bike heading towards Devon. He'd reported that Karn had provided him some reading material that looked promising. Information was the key. On that, they had all agreed. But the information that Sage had, she couldn't reveal, especially not to the others like Sylvia and Nix. They seemed just as likely to turn on her as help her if they knew the truth of where the weapon was. They found Devon sitting in his office, nose buried in books that he'd borrowed, scanning each page before moving on to the next. A.S.S.E.T definitely had it, Gray said the moment that they came through the door. And Ava sent us to treat with the vampires, which tells me she thinks they know more about what happens than we do. Sage can stay with me. We have lots of reading to do. Devon tilted his head towards a small stack on his desk. I'm going with Gray, Sage answered back. My first official assignment, she said proudly. You're not ready for this, Devon argued. Ava should have known better than to send both of you. What is she playing at? She's either trying to get rid of her two biggest troublemakers, or... Gray let the words hang in the air for a moment. As he watched Sage's eyes widen fearfully. She knows the vampires aren't stupid enough to attack us under a white flag. Devon set his book aside and stood. His jaw set. He had the look of a man who wanted to counsel them against going, but knew that it would do no good. Ava isn't new to the game, I'll give you that. But recent events are unprecedented. A full-scale attack on A.S.S.E.T's building, Darklings turned and sent inside to attack. Nothing went missing, did it? Gray shrugged. I don't know. We just concentrated on the weapon and where it might have gone. Vampires are smarter than that. They had to know A.S.S.E.T was more than capable of defending itself. What were they hoping to gain by attacking? Information about our defenses, Gray offered. Sage knew they were looking for the weapon. But then she realized that they had attacked the main floor, where the agents were, not where any of the archives might have been. Is there a link between the vampire who turned someone and the Darkling? Both Devon and Gray stared dumbstruck at Sage. We believe so. Why? Devon asked. Revenge? She hadn't really pieced it together, but offered her thoughts just the same. Maybe they know the identity of the person who used the stone on them and sent their army in looking to kill that one person. Why attack Phoenix then? Devon scrutinized Sage's face, as if trying to see through her defenses. Some of the agents who didn't make it back came from the Phoenix office too. It's a long shot for sure. But if they were out for simple revenge, they might be looking to attack where they thought the enemy feels it's safest. I'm not entirely convinced it would be that simple, Devon said, scratching the stubble at his chin thoughtfully. But wars have been started because of lesser insults. If the clans think that we have the stone still and know how powerful it is, why risk riling us up, Gray added. Because if they've realized, as we have, that the stone cannot be used by a Terra, then it would have had to have been from someone tied to the organization, someone who might be able to hide under the safety net of being in the building. Sage continued, relaying the thoughts as they came to her. All the more reason we need to take this mission. Talk to the vampires who were hit. See if they might give us something to go on. Gray nodded towards the door. Through the glass pane, the gorgeous Through the glass pane, the gorgeous crimson and ochre stripes of the sunset were fading into the dusky colors of twilight. Time for the vampires to come out of hiding. Yeah, don't worry about me. Sage stood her ground, crossing her arms in front of her, making a good show of determination, even though the fear had begun to creep up her spine. No backing out. She'd never hear the end of it. I'll be fine. I have Gray here as my meat shield. Already picking out pet names? You two make a cute couple. Devon's face remained flat as his tone, but his words were sharply chosen. Gray laughed as if Devon had told the funniest joke. If he's your meat shield, what does that make you? Devon asked. Sage opened her mouth to refute his insinuation, but embarrassment held her voice in check when she realized the joke was on her. All she could do was wait until they settled down. She chewed her cheek, keeping her head high, in the hopes of appearing above their childish remarks. She's a damn newbie, that's what she is, Gray replied, wiping away the tears of laughter. Devon whipped a finger at him. Well then, you make sure you have her back. You hear me, meat shield? Gray smirked. I know my job. We'll be fine. Sage gritted her teeth, trying hard not to appear bothered by their taunting. I can take care of myself. Famous last words. Devon's expression darkened. She walked right into his trap. Damn her pride. He was her trainer. He knew exactly how capable, or not, she was of defending herself. Have you ever been up against a vampire? Zach didn't seem all that tough. She shrugged in the hopes of downplaying her initial mistake. Gray continued to laugh. Zach dropped her... Let me try that again. Zach dropped her little ass on the ground with one blow to the head. You paid him to do that, Sage snarled back at him. I hope I can return the favor someday. Worth every penny, Gray winked. If she could smack that damn smirk off his face, she would. He really deserved a dose of humility. You two need some alone time? Devon stepped in between them. Zach's a pretty boy who knows how to use his charm and good looks. He's a powder puff compared to the real bloodsuckers. Sage backed away, stepping out of the office to be clear of the testosterone filling the small room. Devon had been preferable to Gray so far, but even he had begun to grate on her nerves. All right, so what do I need? She looked around the walls, noting the weapons Devon had mounted above the mirrors. Necklace of garlic, holy water, wooden stake. Devon disappeared behind her. She knew, without a word, that another painful lesson was about to begin. But before she could ready herself, Devon struck. He moved more quickly than she could have anticipated, sweeping her leg in a flash of motion. Knocking her clean to the floor, she lost her breath for half a second. How are you going to stake me from down there? One day, she would learn to keep her damn mouth shut. She'd invited this, all because of her pride. It had been days since the last time she'd kissed the mats, and was enjoying not being made a mockery of in front of others. If only she had just kept her head down and her mouth shut. But she'd invited this, another patented and painful Devon-style no-mercy lesson. Gray stood on the sidelines, snickering, but one look from Devon silenced him. All the weapons in the world won't help if you're on your ass, Devon glared down at her. Sorry, master, Sage groaned. Butt hurt, more than her pride at the moment, but not by much. Being cute won't work either. He held out a hand to help her up. She reached for it, but the moment she did, his other hand came down hard, sending his palm into her chest. Sage fell backwards harder than before, all the air knocked from her chest this time. She was certain that she'd bruised her tailbone as well. Never trust a vampire, Devon called out. She wanted to reply that he wasn't one, but as she struggled to suck in breath enough to fill her lungs, there was nothing left to speak with. You need to be aware of what's going on at all times, Devon said with a side-eyed glance towards Gray. He wasn't inviting that jerk into this lesson, was he? She scrambled to put her back to the wall and cut off any attack from behind. Devon circled around to the left, and Gray slowly moved to her right. With Devon, it paid to expect the unexpected, but Gray was the unknown. She watched him closely for any signs of movement. Scooting up against the wall, she made it to her feet and set herself ready for an attack. Devon came at her first, aiming low to knock her off balance. She pivoted from his lunge and found Gray's fist heading for her stomach. 2 against 1 was unfair. They both had her own size and strength, and it was all she could do to duck and dodge each time both of them tried to swing at her. Maneuvering the best she could, Sage took a brutal punch to the gut and nearly lost her lunch. She doubled over in time to miss another meaty fist aimed at her head, and somehow found the strength to throw all her weight into an elbow, taking Gray down to the mats as she connected with his groin. Devon stopped his attack, chuckling, as Gray, who lay groaning on the ground, cupping himself with his hand. I'll give you this, your size puts you at an advantage sometimes. Thanks, I'll remember that. Sage clutched her own aching stomach, hoping that she didn't have a broken rib. Even if she did, it was worth it to watch Gray straining to hold back the tears in his eyes. He struggled to his feet, and she savored every grunt of exertion. It was only a small taste of the karmic payback she owed him, but it was definitely a satisfactory start. You'll heal fast, but only if you come out alive, Devon said. And I'll expect to see you back here after you've dealt with the vampires. You'll report in to me, understand? She nodded. Are we expecting them to fight? Given recent events, you're walking into the lion's den. Expect anything, he replied. So what about weapons? I mean, I know you say I have all I need here, but I'd feel a hell of a lot safer with a wooden stake or something. Sage's gaze flitted up to an impressive set of machetes on the wall, and Devon's jaw tightened again. He, too, looked to the wall as if knowing exactly what weapons Sage had in mind. Your best weapons are faith and courage. Odd reply. What faith am I supposed to have? In the mother? As far as she understood, the gods didn't really care much to interfere in the day-to-day of the world they created. But before she could open her mouth and ask for clarification, Devon reached out and took one of her hands and balled it up into a fist. Faith, he held up her fist and then grabbed for the other one. And courage. Those are terrible fist names. Gray had found his voice, and it was steeped in arrogance. Tempting as it was, Sage did not unleash faith or courage on him, though she might offer him a taste of justice before the night was over. Call them what you will. These right here are your best defense. Don't give an enemy something they can use against you. Devon let her hands drop. But if you must, take something sharp and pointy. Sage remembered the box, her mother's personal effects. Miranda had all manner of sharp and pointy things that she could use to defend herself. I think I know just the thing, but I need to stop at my house first. Chapter 27. So, this new job of yours, does it have good medical? Matt asked the moment Sage came through the door. Yep. She kept walking quickly and threw up a hand to cover the biggest of the bruises that were blooming on her arm. Sage had no doubt that she looked rough, but she didn't want to let it on. This was only supposed to be a pit stop. No time for lengthy explanations, even though she owed Matt one. Voices in the hallway followed, carrying all the way into her room. You see that girl there? She's my best friend. She didn't need to see Matt to know that he'd be a stonewall, not allowing Gray to pass into the living room. As scary as Gray could be, Matt had the advantage of passion to back up his muscles. If you hurt her, I'm coming for you. Those words bolstered her spirit. She felt Matt's love as strongly as the beating of her own heart. No matter what anyone told her, she was Tara or whatever, Sage was his best friend, and Matt was hers. That was a bond worth protecting. She waited to hear if Gray would reply. Given that the men had their need to always one-up each other, he'd probably say something insulting, though the aim of his ire would land on her rather than the man threatening to protect her. Either way, it could cause a fight. She held her breath, ready to throw herself between two hulking men if need be, but she never heard a reply from Gray. Maybe he had some smarts after all. Not willing to take any further chances, though, Sage dressed as quickly as she could, in dark pants and an equally dark shirt. She opted for combat boots instead of the belted leather heels that Matt had originally suggested when they last played dress-up. By themselves, they made a very gothic-looking uniform. Only when she threaded her legs through the thigh straps of the utility belt and clasped it around her waist and donned her mother's leather jacket did she transform from angsty to killer. The jacket, well worn and surprisingly easy to move in, quickly warmed to her body, welcoming its new owner. She felt totally badass, and for a moment, as she caught her reflection in the mirror, she saw the shadow of her mother, as if looking over her shoulder with approval. By the time she made it back to the living room, it looked as if both men were about to come to blows. Jaws dropped along with fists as she sauntered in, suited up, and ready for action. Oh, damn, Matt fanned himself. You look like the Tomb Raider reborn. She didn't wear that much leather, Sage smirked at his admiration. If Matt said she looked good, there was no denying it. Celine, Grace said, with an over-the-top eye roll. If only that chick was badass with a capital B, Sage giggled awkwardly, wondering if he truly meant to compliment her or if he was just trying to correct Matt's description. Cosplay is cool and all, Matt's expression darkened, worry creating lines in his brow that aged him well past his years. Please tell me you both are going to a convention this late at night? It's only 8, Sage said as she rushed to the junk drawer to grab an elastic for her hair. Knowing that they were heading into a war zone, she didn't want to worry about tangles or strands getting in her way. The sun's barely gone down, she rolled her eyes, hoping to give off the casual impression that they were just heading out for fun, not work, seeing as how she, as she weaved her long hair into a quick braid that rested over her shoulder. There. Now I'm totally working the Tomb Raider angle. Wrong. All wrong. Matt shook his head and held his hand out. She'd never been able to do her own hair, but Matt had practiced hands. He took the elastic from her and unwound her poor excuse for a braid. You know what I mean. I worry, and I don't particularly trust the daywalker over here. In seconds, he turned her mop into a warrior's braid that would rival any one that Miranda used to sport. What would I do without you? She kissed him on the cheek. Gray stood by, grinding his teeth. He could be bothered all he wanted for let me try that again. He could be bothered all he wanted, for all Sage cared. He had been nothing but a jerk to her. Please be safe, Matt whispered. I'll be fine. He won't let anything happen to me. She met Gray's eyes, daring him to say something stupid. They might not like each other, but they were working as a team, and that had to count for something. And yet you walked in hiding bruises? Matt whipped a finger at her. She'd almost forgotten that. Her stomach still hurt from the sparring session earlier. Training session, self-defense twice a week. Well, I hope you got in a few good punches of your own then. Matt didn't look convinced. He stood with his arms crossed, like an unpassable mountain between the living room and the kitchen. Just ask him, Sage giggled. Good old elbow to the nuts? Matt hissed and sent his hands cupping his crotch. Works every time. You have to trust me. I'm safe enough. This is what I was born for. Your mother died working for those loonies, Matt cut her off. She did. And I will never forget that, which is why I have this meat shield over here to protect me. She tilted her head at Gray, who grunted in agreement. The look on his face sat somewhere between disgust and boredom. I'll be safe enough, and tomorrow I'll buy the coffee, okay? I'm not asking questions now, out of respect for our friendship. But you will have a lot of explaining to do when this is over. Matt's nostrils flared with each breath, but after a few moments he let his arms fall to his sides and retreated to the room, muttering, skinny caramel latte. That's an oxymoron, Sage scoffed as she headed towards the door. Who orders something non-fat and loaded with sugar? Nutrition 101. It's a fight they'd had many times over the course of their friendship. Then don't make it skinny. His door closed with a slam. Matt's patience was wearing thin, and she'd have to explain everything to him soon. At least he hadn't pressed her to talk in front of Gray. If he'd asked, she'd have been forced to spill all the secrets, and then he'd be up all night worrying after her. And that never solved anything. She had a job to do. She had to learn what happened to the vampire covens, and now that the sun was down, she had to move quickly. Sage sighed and ushered Gray through the door ahead of her. I'll be home soon. Love you. And that's the end of that chapter. So next week it'll be chapter 28, where she actually gets to go meet the vampires at the Vampires Coven. Oh, we're getting into some of the fun chapters. I'm so excited. All right, so let's take a peek at the comments section. How are we doing today, guys? We've got... Well, hello. I haven't seen you in the comments before. Thanks for listening. Yes, I do sound a little bit better, although I still have a little bit of a scratchy throat. Nothing a little tea won't fix. And we've got Regine. Hey, Regine, how we doing? All about revenge. Yes, there's a lot of revenge going on. I knew Sage was smart. I guess you guys like the meat shield comment. Clean his clock or bend his pipes. I love that. That's great. Well, you know what? She hasn't quite given him back all the revenge that she needs to get out of him, but at least she got one good shot, right? We'll see what happens. Corny, terrible fist name. Oh, yeah. I had to come up with the cheesiest fist names, and it's a running gag through the whole series. So the more you follow the series, you'll see the fist names again. The magical jacket. It was Mama's jacket. It's kind of like the Dumbo's feather thing, you know. It's a normal item, but when you put it on, you feel that confidence. You feel, in her case, like the badass. You are ready to take on the world, whether she can or not. Doesn't really matter at this point. She feels it, and confidence is pretty important. It can't do her own hair. Nope. No, and that's another thing that runs through the series. Now, her bond with Matt is like that brotherly bond, and he is her gossip. He is her guru. He is her big brother. I mean, he is everything that she needs. And when it comes time to looking beautiful, he's the one she goes to. Which I always thought was funny. But you know what? I've had friends in the past that I've had to rely on too, that I can't do makeup, and they know what they're doing. So hell, you can do it better than me, please. Teach me, master. Oh, what do we got here? Don't worry, Matt. She has a meat shield. Not even coffee. Wait, what are we referring to here? Is it the skinny latte? All right, you'll have to tell me what that one means. Love coffee. Yes, coffee is always good. And Sage does not exist without coffee. She's a coffee fiend. There's, I think, probably at least 10 to 20 mentions of coffee in just about every book. What's funny, too, is I don't even drink coffee. I will rarely, if ever, drink coffee. I prefer tea. But coffee is like the go-to caffeine substitute for most people. So for Sage, that is her thing. She's always looking for the next cup of coffee, and she's looking for that liquid caffeine that she needs. Let's see. The fedora wearing meat shield is Odes. Yes. Oh, yes. I like how sassy she is. She is sassy. She is very, very sassy. She's snarky. It gets her into trouble. But I think that's kind of, it has to happen that way. You can't have somebody who is just super overconfident that never gets a taste of their own medicine. And Sage is an excellent character for that, because she's got to learn and she's got to grow from it. Whether she does or not, you have to read to find out. But she definitely goes through the motions. Where is Rebecca? I haven't seen Rebecca at all. Oh, wait, hold on. There she is. Hey, Rebecca. I was wondering what happened to you. And of course, Rebecca read for us last week, and she did such a phenomenal job. I bow down to your skills, Rebecca, as the master. I trip over my own words. But as you've seen before on other shows, I trip over my words just talking on a regular basis. This isn't just how I read. This is how I talk. I'm constantly tripping over words. Skinny caramel latte is not coffee. Well, I think in this case, Sage was arguing that the non-fat milk, like, you can't get away with that. You can't pretend like you're being healthy by ordering non-fat milk and then loading it down with all the sugar. So, and they do have arguments about this. Again, throughout the books, you see that bond that they have, and the little inside jokes that play between them. She did a great job, too. Rebecca did such a good job reading. I love how well Rebecca can just read and not trip over her words. I think I said to her the other day that my mouth and my brain and my eyes don't work at the same speed. And that's the big problem. Someday I'll get them to coordinate, but right now I don't. The world does not exist without coffee. It does exist without coffee. It does not exist without caffeine. That is the important thing, in whatever form you get it in. I'm not particularly a coffee drinker. I prefer my teas, but I will drink so much tea that I just spend the rest of the day in the bathroom because it just runs straight through you. Whereas coffee doesn't necessarily do that as much. Red Bull, which has always been my go-to, or the Bings, which are my go-to, those are horrible for you. But they have lots of caffeine, and that's what keeps me running. Don't know why Facebook is hating on me today. Oh, no. Facebook's acting funny. I've had problems trying to watch videos through Facebook, and I keep trying to push the Facebook videos on Facebook, but YouTube is so much easier, and that's what YouTube was meant for. So I tend to do most of my watching and commenting through YouTube because I have less problems. I was looking at videos on Facebook, and I could watch them when they were in like thumbnail size, but when you expanded them and made them full screen, then they got all weird and jittery, and they got to fix something with their system. It's definitely a Facebook issue. I only have dirty jokes to make about the eye and mouth coordination. That's for a different show. All right. There we go. All the comments are coming through at once. Okay, so you're seeing it on Facebook with no issues. Are you watching it in full screen, or are you watching it in like thumbnail view? I don't know if that's really what it's called, but when it's just in the timeline, when it's smaller. Thank goodness. Well, I'm glad there's no issues. I'm glad, because I worry about that. I am trying to make sure that I can get this streaming as many places as possible so I can reach as many people as possible when I do these. So I want to make sure the video is good. So, all right, guys, I've taken up enough time of yours today. We're almost at the 30-minute mark, and I don't want to make these too long because I don't want to take up all your day. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for a read through. We are so close to the end of the book now. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get to the climax here. Anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will do another video next week. I know with Christmas coming up, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do one between Christmas and New Year's. I'm going to try. It'll all depend on, how the family is doing. With the kids out of school, it's going to be a lot harder for me to arrange for quiet time to do these readings, but I'm going to try. I will make sure to post the notices on them. And as we head towards Christmas, you guys, remember, take some time, do something for yourself. Self-care is so, so important, especially right now. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next Sunday.